There will be bourbon, and tonight there will be Joel Gaines. How you doing, brother?
How's it going, man?
It's going great. As always, before I get into this wonderful guest who's taken time out of his busy schedule to join myself and to bring his wonderful thoughts to you and whoever else is out there, as always, this discussion will be fueled by America's native spirit, bourbon. And tonight we're going a little bit, we're going lower shelf if you can find this stuff. Okay. The first time I got exposed to it, Benchmark Bourbon, was out in California. This happens to be the bottled and bond version. It's very specifically called Benchmark Bonded. If you aren't aware, I've said it a million times, but bottled and bond was the first act by Congress to regulate an actual product in this country. It was passed in 1897. It just guarantees the quality of the product. For bourbon, it means it's aged at least 4 years. It's the product of one distilling season at one distillery. It is under lock and key by the feds until it is actually bottled and produced and sold to you. And it is a minimum of 100 proof. Now, Benchmark, what makes it interesting is that everyone goes crazy for the entire line of Buffalo Trace products, mainly Pappy and the Weller stuff. But it is made by Buffalo Trace. It's very good. Definitely a distinct flavor. It is the same mash bill that does produce Buffalo Trace and some of your other favorites. It's their mash bill number 2. I don't know why I held up 3 fingers, but it is number 2. Thank you, Joel. And so there you go. That's what I'll be getting into tonight. And then I'm actually going to make a little cocktail at some point with Buffalo Trace and little black walnut bitters, right? I've been talking about this stuff for a while. It's great. I love it. But anyway, all right, now that we know what's fueling this discussion, Joel, how are you, brother?
I'm good, man. As always, I'm hydrating.
That's right.
I'm hydrating with some refrigerator dispensed bubble water, much to Braxton McCoy's chagrin.
Yeah. Oh, he's not a fan of the
Oh, he loves
version?
the bubble water.
He does.
He loves the bubble water. He's just angry because I have a refrigerator that dispenses it.
Why is he angry about that?
Because he does not have a
refrigerator. He does not have one, right? Yeah, it's actually funny. There's like, what is it, SodaStream or something? They make those as well. But yeah, one of the offices I go into from time to time, I specifically make a point to reserve a spot on the floor that has the SodaStreams with the flavor. It's so good. It really is.
This is the SodaStream built into a Samsung refrigerator.
That's nice. Is it now? Is your refrigerator? Is it wireless capable? Like
no. So we're not having any of that.
Yeah, we're not gonna have a software update where it just shuts down and stops refrigerating.
Nope.
Aren't we getting a little too technologically driven with our appliances?
Or tech reliant,
maybe. Tech reliant.
I think if the refrigerator will tell you what the inside smells like before you open the door, now we're talking.
I've seen like some of them now, like you can customize their appearance based on color and all, and you can have a see-through window and all. Like, why do you need a see-through window for a refrigerator?
I don't know, man.
That's one thing I don't know what the designers are up to, because it's like,
so the whole inventory thing, if you're a data guy, I guess that would be attractive to you.
Oh, okay.
But like sometimes I just like to open the door and be surprised,
or disappointed.
Or disappointed.
Whichever comes first.
Yeah, you just spin the wheel.
And then, man, what's the other one I've seen that you can? So actually, I really do love this. My brother got me this for, I don't know if it was Christmas or Father's Day a few years ago, but the Wi-Fi meat thermometers.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, especially with grilling, because I mean, he's stable. He's got the same grill he's had forever, but I move so much that you got to learn a whole new grill every time we go somewhere.
Absolutely.
Right. So, but this, I am getting a little reliant on it sometimes because I just nail everything I cook, but I'm also like, man, wait a minute. How can I replicate that without the meter?
The applause is kind of worth the technology though.
I know it is great. And I mainly use it for like, if I buy one of those big, like 5-pound tomahawks, like, and you can risk that if you want, but I'd rather nail it. And that thing's a pretty cool piece of technology. It's a battery. So, nothing too bad to maintain. It does have a software update, and if you hit it, it takes like 20 minutes. So I never do it.
Yeah, so we know a guy that had a bad experience with a software update on a cooking utensil.
He did. Wasn't it on Thanksgiving?
It was on Thanksgiving.
It's a green egg, right?
And we're never gonna let him forget it.
No, as you shouldn't. And it's a good thing he's anonymous, so he doesn't really have to know that he's being made fun of publicly, because he's just like, they don't even know.
Oh no, we're gonna make sure he knows.
Yeah. So that's where we're at. Okay. So the main reason I wanted to talk to Joel, he's a very interesting guy, but he does have a great background with his military side. So you were you said a Cold War era dude, intel background, primarily a Russian focus, right?
Yeah, so I specialized in the Russian area,
Okay.
and that's a little bit different from being a Russian linguist.
Yeah.
I was classified as a Russian linguist in electronic warfare space, but I did some other things and worked for a couple of other organizations outside of the Army while I was still in. Been to total immersion courses where you show up at a little, not really a village, it's just more like an apartment complex
Yeah.
or that's got a community center and stuff. We rent the whole thing out. And the only thing that you have in common with everybody else there is Russian. So we did some pretty cool stuff. Had a good time. Um, the the meat of it is getting into that Russian psyche and starting to learn about who it is to be a Russian.
Yeah.
I'm half Russian, so that helped.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Um, but yeah, so had a good time with all of that.
How did you end up what made you join the Army in the first place?
Uh, so I was 19 and I was tired of working at Burger King.
I
And
was a
so I
McDonald's guy.
joined, yeah, so I joined the Army. I thought I was going to get into the Air Force, but I guess it wasn't smart enough for that.
Hmm.
I think I was barely smart enough for me, right? So I joined the Army and I started in Signal,
Yep.
and so I carried a radio, worked switchboard kind of stuff, tactical switchboard, cable operator, cable dog, and climbed telephone poles,
Yeah.
and crap like that. I worked in Second Infantry Division in Korea during that time, and I didn't like climbing telephone poles.
I was gonna say that's a good career if you want to be in California, be a linesman. They make tons of money out there.
We make tons of money, but I was like,
Very
I
dangerous.
was not very good at climbing telephone poles, so
I don't know. That's not a
I had
natural skill.
chunks of pole sticking out of my arms on occasion. I was like, you know what? Screw this. I'm not doing this anymore. Let's see if I'm smart enough to do something else. So I took a language proficiency test to see if I could learn the language. Did pretty well on it. And they gave me some choices. I chose Russian since I'd already had a little bit of kitchen Russian, and
That's cool.
away we went.
Yeah, I mean, we used to do that practice test in the office, and none of us were smart enough to learn a language. It's because it's testing you to learn a fake one, and it's like I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
It,
I
it
learned.
might be Esperanto. I'm not even sure. Like I don't remember that far back, but it might be that UN language they tried to make.
I have no idea. I just know that like we would sit there just for fun to kill time in the office, and none of us were ever smart. I think one guy got a score that would have been like 2 points within being able to do
Yeah.
it, but all of us were like 30s and 40s. We were dumb. I mean, come on, we're not learning. Yeah, the only language I was learning was just by osmosis. I'm not going to go be able to learn something in a classroom setting. How long was your training for Russian? How long was that?
So it was 47 weeks, I think, for the
Jeez.
basic course
Wow.
in DLI. I was in Monterey, California,
Yeah, it's beautiful.
and
Beautiful
yeah, I
spot.
loved it.
Yeah. That's the
You
greatest
wake up in the
army base
morning.
that we have, I think.
Yeah, I was an NCO at the time, so you
oh,
wake
even
up in the
better. Look at
morning,
that. You're living the
you have
life, man.
NCO quarters. You open up your
Yeah,
window
you actually had
shades,
the money to
and
enjoy it.
there's the freaking bay right there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I out
Um,
processed. So did some other stuff, took some people there, but I was always getting a chance to go to Monterey, and just man, every time you walk on there, it's just amazing. It's a beautiful spot.
Yeah, so there was a place on the pier um, called Gino's at the time. Uh, it was from the Genovese family, and we got really close with the people that ran that. It was one of the granddaughters
Oh, okay.
and her family, and we just kind of took the place over. And they'd get really busy, and we'd jump back behind the bar and serve drinks for them and stuff like that, and get people plowed, and giggle about it. Um, but that's where we did all of our studying and stuff. They had an upstairs that they would let us use that
That's cool.
they never really had people there
That's
enough
cool.
to open up the upstairs. So we'd go up there and eat calamari and drink White Russians and stuff.
I drink White Russians. Oh man, what is that? The Big Lebowski, where that drink's a famous drink in? Yeah. Man, I drank a ton of those at one of my cousin's weddings years ago, and that was hammer. That was Hammerville.
That's how you learn the language, though.
Yeah.
You
The White
just
Russian?
yeah, you just drink enough vodka so you don't really care if you make mistakes.
So where do you come out? Are you do you prefer the white Russian or the black Russian?
I'm more of a Black Russian guy,
Exactly.
honestly.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
it's a little easier on the stomach as you, as you get going.
Yeah. So the White Russian, the benefit of it is you're coating your stomach as you're getting plowed, right?
Yeah.
But I just like that, that bitterness that comes
Yeah.
with a good
No, they're
good
good.
strong
Yeah.
coffee.
You don't see that. A lot of people don't, I don't know if they have experience with it, but that's definitely an old school drink, but it's very,
Yeah.
very good. It's very, very
Yeah.
good. All
Yeah.
right.
I don't drink anymore, but
Yeah, I know you're more of a dihydrogen monoxide type of guy who doing push-ups and
yeah.
stuff, which is good. What made you quit drinking? I know a lot of our circle is either sober or they've experienced it lately, and it's good either way.
Yeah.
It pressures anyone to do
So
anything.
I
So
just got to a point where my body just didn't like the alcohol and it wasn't really processing it well
yeah.
anymore. And I could drink a glass of wine with dinner and just feel like crap.
Oh,
So
really?
I think I just tell people, everybody's got this quota of alcohol that they can drink in their lifetime. And I just hit it a little bit earlier than everybody else.
That's a fair point. I'm not there yet. I feel like I'm going the other direction at sometimes my tolerance is too high. Like I can do a bottle of wine as opposed to a glass, and it's just like,
Yeah.
all right, I go to bed and I'm fine in the morning. But I know that those days will come to an end, or maybe they won't. I don't know. Maybe I'm like an old school
Some
Frenchman.
people,
You
some
know,
people, they just,
I watched this documentary of this French winemaker, and he does a tour of his personal wine cellar, and he's got thousands of bottles down there. And he's like, and they ask him, "What's the oldest one in here?" He's like, "I don't know, but probably not more than 2 years because I drink one a night." And he's just some thin looking dude. Like he's not
yeah.
some, like you would think he's some fat French. No, he just, this is what he does. Like that's his life. He drinks wine every single day and he constantly, and you can afford to do it over there. Like we get ripped off a lot with our wine here
Oh,
in
for
this
sure.
country.
For
But I
sure.
mean,
There's a
yeah,
lot of marketing.
you spend time in Europe and I remember the first time I went to Italy and I had a chance to go and bring some wine back. And I go into the store and, every bottle of wine is like between 2 and 10 euros.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't do that here. Everything's between 20 and 100 if you want anything decent in this country. It's weird how they do that, how that markup
Yeah.
goes. Yeah. Um so when you were in Monterey, did you ever, I don't know what years you were there, but was this this famous restaurant that really kind of started the 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 wine list boom in this country was the Sardine Factory. Did you ever go there?
no, I
No.
haven't been there for sure. I haven't been there. I don't think I'd ever even heard of it.
Yeah, that was early eight, I want to say 83 maybe when it opened. I had a chance
Well,
to go
yeah,
last
it
year.
definitely would have been open while I was there. I don't
Yeah,
remember.
yeah, no, that's but I mean I'm blanking on the guy's name, but he became really famous in America for he built this wine list there. It's one of the most extensive wine lists in the world. It's over 6,000 bottles. But man, you
Wow.
go into that, they have stuff from literally the Civil War era. Now, I don't know what it tastes like, but if you want to try and
Well,
drop like 30 grand on it, you can go get you a bottle from like the 1860s. Like that's nuts to me that you can still do that. And it's
yeah,
actually
well,
drinkable.
cognac is kind of the same way, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think cognac's a little different because I guess it holds up a little better. Wine is more of a, the way you could get something 2 years old and ruin it the way you store it. But
Yeah, it
something
can
like
be
that, I mean,
fragile.
that's an art form, because it stops. I mean, it's constantly evolving and aging as it's in the bottle. Whereas like a spirit, once you pull it out and bottle it, that's it. Like it's not really doing anything crazy except for maybe if it's unsealed and it gets some exposure to air and all. But
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But no,
I
cognac, you're
want
right. There's some stuff that's like 200 years old. That's
Now,
fucking.
isn't cognac wine that's been distilled?
I don't know if it's wine that's been distilled. I think it's from the Cognac region and it has to be distilled from grapes, but I could be
Okay.
wrong. And if anyone's listening and knows I'm wrong, please feel free to tell me in the comments
Yeah,
later.
I'd like to know. That
Yeah,
maybe
but
that's
I
just
do believe it's a lot like some of the wine or like champagne, right? You can't call it champagne if it's not from Champagne, France. You
right.
call it sparkling wine. But yeah, I think with cognac, it has to come from that cognac region.
So,
So
being a bourbon guy, I wanted to ask you a question. Have you ever
sure.
had Del Bach?
Mm-mm.
So Del
I don't think
Bach is a
so.
Tucson area bourbon. I'll get you a bottle. I'll get a bottle
Oh,
sent
I
to you
love it.
soon.
I tried to do that with Braxton. I tried to get something from Idaho, and there was one that I saw, and I totally forgot to ask him about it on the podcast as well. But I love trying stuff from all over this country because it's starting to expand a lot more with a lot of the
Yeah.
craft distilleries. Still 95% of this country's bourbon comes from Kentucky, but Man, there's some other states that do some really, really good stuff. Like Wyoming whiskey is one of my favorites, I think, from like out west. Like they do
Right.
incredible stuff. And it makes sense because if you think about the whole reason why Kentucky's bourbon's so popular is because of the four seasons and the effect, the impact of the weather and the water. Well, you got that going on out west too. So I'd be
Yeah,
curious to see how
certainly.
something from Arizona
Yeah,
tastes.
so
Really cold
we'll try
winters.
to get some Dilbach Oro to you. We'll
Sure, that'd be
figure out how to
awesome.
do that. Maybe
Yeah,
Caskers can deliver it or something.
yeah, that'd be cool. Where are they at in Arizona?
In Tucson.
Okay.
And actually, there's a couple of people that are mutuals of ours, probably that helped bottle their first rye a couple of weeks ago.
Ah, okay. That's cool. I would think something like up in Sedona might be really good because of the elevation and the temperature shift.
Yeah, they got a lot of stuff up in Sedona, and then out Sonoyta, so even a little bit further south,
Yeah.
pretty close to the Sonoyta Patagonia area. We've got a
Okay.
lot of vineyards out there.
Yeah, I remember the first time I drove through Sedona, I thought it was like a mini Tahoe with smaller trees. You know, like
Yeah,
the trees weren't quite as
it's a
big.
pretty cool place.
It is. And you don't really think about it when you think Arizona. You just think Phoenix and Scottsdale deserts and stuff. And
Yeah,
yeah, it's a cool area. Yeah, I'd love to spend more time there. That's the problem with the West. It's just too damn big, you know. It's just, it's just too
yeah,
much
that's
out there.
true.
All right, so you finish your Russian training in Monterey. Where'd you end up from there? Where'd you head? What was next?
So then we went to an Air Force base in Texas, and the name escapes me at the moment. I think it's in San Angelo. Um, Goodfellow Air Force Base, and you do some advanced electronic warfare training there.
Okay.
And once you're done there, then you go to your duty station.
What did the electronic warfare space look like in the Cold War era? Since now obviously there's computers and
Yeah. So
cloud-based
I
stuff
mean,
everywhere, and so like
well, we had computers. What are you
no,
saying?
I know you had computer, but not everyone had to use them. Now everyone's just tethered to
Yeah.
them, walks around with them like it's the only thing they can do.
Yeah. So it kind of depended on your job, because there's just so many different roles in the electronic warfare space, and
Yeah.
it's probably even more so now, or maybe it's consolidated now. I'm not sure. Um, but for us, it was tons of vehicle recognition. We had to learn all of their warfare systems inside and out. That was a lot of it, because we had to understand how it was referenced and how it was utilized on the battlefield. Because our job was to kind of take all of these signals in, and uh, you had a collection section, you had an analysis section, and then we had to take all of this in, and we had to determine kind of like what was the enemy doing based on
Mm.
the type of electronic emissions that they were creating, and in many cases where they were doing it. And it wasn't so much like the front line of troop stuff. It was usually further back. It was usually deeper
Yeah.
into the battle space, so that we could give combat commanders in the field an idea of like, okay, here's what you're dealing with today, but here's what you're going to be dealing with tomorrow. And that gave them a little bit of an understanding of how that they would deploy or move their forces based on reacting to those situations.
So were you learning just American stuff, or were you learning the Russian stuff as well that we had figured out how to reverse engineer?
Almost entirely the Russian stuff.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
And our intel on that is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Of course, can't talk about it, but
Right. But
the stuff that we know about foreign armies systems is phenomenal. It's nothing short of miraculous.
do you think we still I mean, I know you're a little bit removed at this point, but do you still think we maintain some of that knowledge superiority?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think, especially on the Air Force side,
Yeah.
I think the stuff that they are able to do with emissions is pretty freaking cool.
Minus that whole Chinese weather balloon thing.
Yeah, we can't, if we can find it, I guess we can do pretty cool stuff with it.
No, I think it's funny because the balloon thing. It's like, there's a specific office that's very specific for like Northern American weather tracking and
Yeah.
high altitude stuff, and it's like, really, you missed that
You
one?
didn't catch that one? You can track freaking Santa, but you
Right?
can't.
Yeah. Something we're not sure
Us.
100% exists, but we can't track the real stuff. All right, got it. Yeah.
Yeah, so during this time too, during the Cold War, we still had it where you'd have a group of a sortie of planes that would
Mhm.
just rush an enemy's border,
Yeah.
just head straight towards it. And of course, the enemies lighten up every radar that they have, and then you'd have guys waiting for that so that they could collect that data and tell you, okay, here's what they have here, here's what they have here. So
Not
it
even
was a pretty
realizing
cool
they're just
time.
giving it all away.
They're just giving it all away.
That's
Yeah.
cool. Yeah. Do you think I'm trying to think, there's a really good movie about, what was it? 13 Days, I think, with JFK kind of in the Cuban Missile Crisis, when the U-2 flies over and takes all that flak and everything from the ground, but basically
Yes.
maps everything and showcases like, yeah, actually everything that you said is not in Cuba, it's right there.
It's right there. Yeah.
Oh, the good times, the good days. So okay, so I see the helmet in the background. You got the chocolate chip gear. Did you do some Desert Storm stuff?
Yeah. So I was in Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and then Provide Comfort, which we were basically trying to keep the Iraqis from killing the Kurds when they couldn't kill
Yeah,
anybody else.
kind of important.
Yeah. Everybody likes killing Kurds, not for some reason.
So how was the shift for that, going from like totally Cold War focused to let's go to the desert?
Yeah, it was interesting. The unit that I was in was pretty awesome. We'd done some really cool things in Germany, um, and we deployed from Germany, and that's kind of where the War Lizard came from. That was like
Yeah,
the unit
your
mascot
tactical
sort of
thing.
thing.
Yeah, we'll get to that. That's cool.
Yeah.
War Lizard. All right.
Um, and yeah, the transition was pretty cool, but you got to realize by then we'd had some experience with Reforger, which was the return of forces to Germany.
Mm-hmm.
So if the Fulda Gap pops off, those of us that were already there, we probably would survive about 24 hours, but you know, getting everybody else in and on board. So we had a lot of experience with that. We had a Grafenwehr, which was a big maneuver training area that we spent a lot of time in, and we deployed, like we were all over Germany. So we our tracks ran. I don't know how things are these days, but we would get on the road and go places,
Yeah.
and not very fast, but we would go. Um, so I think the maneuver part of it was pretty good. I was in Fifth Corps. We got shifted over to Seventh Corps, and then Seventh Corps is what deployed to the Gulf. Um, and I think the culture shock to me was getting on a little jingle bus,
Yep.
right?
Yeah. Yep.
After unloading all of our crap at the airport and all of that, we were still very serious about security and all of that. And we get on this little jingle bus, and they took our ammo away from us.
I know. It's we still do that. And it's still the most unnerving thing in the world. I'm like, no, why are we getting onto this fucking bus with some foreigner dude driving us around with the windows shaded out, and we can't,
And
we're
they
just gonna
just
sit
took our
here?
ammo.
Yeah, well, we're just gonna sit here. Like, what? Where in the agreement is that? Like, what?
Yeah. And but then we got to was it Daman, I think, Dammam, um, in Kuwait, and we were waiting for the rest of our gear, rest of our vehicles, and got everything we could get painted. And I was in the 11 Scud attacks, and at some point we ended up at our forward assembly area, and then we did a 500-mile drive.
Isn't that amazing?
It was crazy.
Yeah, there's did you guys train up at all when you left Germany, or was this just kind of like, let's just figure it out?
No,
It's weird how we did
no.
the same shit 13 years, 12 years later. Like, we just didn't, we
Yeah,
just figured it out.
we did some EPW training and stuff like that, kind of
That's
on our
interesting.
own.
Yeah.
Guys of
Yeah.
us that maybe had some experience
But
already.
none of that convoy training where you would just like, hey, let's pretend we're driving 500 miles through a desert.
No, and
Yeah, that's
and
weird.
and
That's so weird to me
and
because I thought that was
you
one of
know,
the more
back
well
then you
planned
only had
wars.
like, yeah, crazy man. You only had like one set of nods per squad.
Oh, we never had them. We weren't privileged enough. We were a reserve unit. We didn't get that stuff at all.
Yeah, so we had
And
one
that's cool
set of
that you
nods
had
per
them.
squad. So yeah, so everybody's freaking blind, right?
Mhm.
Just follow that guy.
And we
Uh,
put chem lights behind and on the backs of every vehicle. Just hope we could see those. But after an hour or so, just the dust cover blocks them out anyway, so you don't see
yeah, I
anything.
just blocked them out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so
Uh,
we also had one Loran for the whole company.
Now, what is that for those who have no idea what you're talking about?
So that was like the old school GPS
Okay.
before Magellan, and well,
Ah,
Magellan might have been out about the same time, but Loran was what we had. It was mostly used on ships and stuff like that.
okay.
So we had one for the entire company. So we had one guy
So no
in a
strip map and
Humvee.
just follow this map and just because
There
you
was
guys
no
there was
strip
no
map.
routes, right? You were just going.
We were, yeah. So they were like, you're gonna go west for like 400 miles, and then you're gonna turn right 90 degrees.
That's insane. And this was in Iraq, right? Or was this still Saudi Arabia?
Yeah. So our forward assembly areas, half our unit was in Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
The rest of us were still back at the docks,
Yeah.
waiting
Okay,
for the
quit. Yeah.
gear.
Because Saudi
That's
Arabia is a
that's
massive fucking country.
yeah.
It's huge.
Um, so 11 Scud attacks later, we got to take all of our gear. They were like, yeah, just go to this town, and you'll find somebody. And the way they told us how to pronounce the town is nothing like the way it was pronounced. So we kept asking people, hey, where's this town?
And you guys were the intel
And
guys. What's going on?
yeah, they were like, uh, yeah, it's this what some Wadi Al Bateen is where you're going. So we're asking everybody where Wadi Al Bateen was, and it was Wadi Al Batin. And of course,
Just a
we'd say
bit of
Wadi Al Bateen, and they'd be looking at us like, what?
what? That's
So
funny.
we finally got there, using these military service routes, which is basically like a big channel in the river. It's
Yep.
right on red returning kind of crap.
Yeah.
Um, Uh, and we get there and we get all set up, and then we get to deploy. I don't remember which brigade I was attached to, but the way our unit worked is each squad is its own independent um, maneuver unit.
Okay.
So we had to have a lot of firepower. We had to have a lot of training. We were our own chem support. We were our own commo support. We were our own medical support.
All in
Um,
house. That's good.
all in house, 7, 8
You guys are
guys,
like
two
little ODAs.
M60s, AT4s. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
we had everything, because we had to.
Mm-hmm.
Funny thing is because we were on medical support before we deployed from Germany, they gave us all of this medication, just loads of it.
Lots of
So
malaria
we're
pills.
looking through it, and we saw this one that's called Cafragot. It had like 300 milligrams of caffeine in it. 1 milligram of this, I don't remember what it was. We're like, great. We'll just pound this Cafragot stuff, right? And that'll
Army
keep it
logic. You
away.
love it.
So that's what we did.
Oh my
So we were
God.
pounding Cafragot, right? And then we get to an aid station, and somebody got sick. We all got dysentery. Somebody, we all got dysentery.
Not the thing you want in the desert without, running water.
Without any support, right? So we finally get this guy. We Humvee him out to a medic station, and they're like, "Are you guys taking any meds?" And we're like, "Oh, well, we're all taking this Cafragot." And he was like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah, we're doing like 3 or 4 a day." He was like, "Do you know how highly addictive that shit is?"
Actually, no. No, I don't. Tell
Because
me.
that 1 milligram of whatever is in that, they treat migraines for this stuff, right? So they were like, "Yeah, you can't take that anymore.
Dude.
You guys are freaking morons." Um, That was a big standout for me, was we were taking this stuff. It was highly addictive to, so we could stay awake.
I love how like that's kind of one of your better memories, and you kind of just glossed over the Scud attack thing. You know that no, but
That,
that I think that's telling because I remember very distinctly like several rocket attacks and stuff like that. But I
yeah,
never really talk about that shit. You just talk about the dumb stuff that you did like that. And
yeah,
when I was just on Heather's podcast, I talk about standing in a Burger King line for 4.5 hours on the 4th of July because that's what's really
right.
worth remembering and telling. Like the other stuff is kind of expected. You're like, yeah, there were some bad times too, but the funny shit and the good stuff, the dumb things that you find yourself in or that you just do because you can, that's worth sharing.
Yeah, I mean the Scud attacks were scary, man. But
Yeah.
Patriot guys, these guys are fucking on point.
Those things are pretty damn cool, aren't they?
They're pretty cool.
Like you're
And
talking about the ADA dudes in the back, like the Humvees with the
yeah,
Patriots and yeah, that's some cool
yeah,
shit.
it was pretty awesome. So, thank God for those guys, because who knows.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that was pretty scary stuff. But all right, what are you gonna do?
So was there ever a time where you because I mean I think everyone knows what they know about Desert Storm, but I try to compare it sometimes to like the post Iraq invasion in '03, where it's like, yeah, we're gonna just set up garrison now and turn this into a never ending
Yeah,
vacation. Did you guys ever get to that point, or was it like, all right, it's time to we did what we came here to do. Let's go home.
no,
Let's drive the
yeah.
400 miles back.
So we got to about Basra, I think. Um,
Okay,
my unit did. Um, we got to experience them blowing up a chemical dump and exposing us all to nerve agent. Um, and
Gulf War
then,
syndrome. Anybody? Right.
yeah, for real. So then they had the demarcation line,
Mm,
and there was some grabassery around that. The Iraqis still wanted to kill Kurds, so they would shoot artillery at them and shoot over the demarcation line. And I tell you what, I do not like enemy artillery at all. Um, but once again, we had superior forces. We would just get on the radio and call, and a couple of Apaches would show up, and the Iraqis decided they didn't want to shoot Kurds anymore.
that's nice.
Um, yeah, it was really good. But for us, it was a very different situation because by then the United Nations was certain that if we wanted to take over Iraq at that time that we could, and they did not want us to do that because we were going to expose a bunch of crap, right?
Mm.
So because the Germans were involved in the bunker making, and the Germans and the Italians were making the Scud tubes.
Didn't the
Um,
French
you
make the
know,
the the big bunkers in the air that we dropped the J dams and shit on?
yeah, the French were making a bunch of those big bunkers.
Yeah,
Um,
remember
and
that.
after the demarcation line stuff, when we were waiting for everybody, we got to do some intel grabs from some of these bunkers, and some of the stuff we pulled out of there was pretty amazing too. I had and I gave them up, and I probably shouldn't because they probably just ended up in an incinerator. But I had the entire Iraqi version of the armor analysis for the Iran-Iraq war,
Oh,
and I
wow.
gave that up, thinking maybe this will be
Useful, right?
useful to somebody, and I should have kept it.
And you could have back then. Like now you can't
I
keep
could
anything.
have
Yeah,
kept
you
it.
could have totally kept it. That could have been just going back. Yeah, you know what? Let me ask that because I do have another before I have a segue, but real quick. So I know what it was like the let's say the first time, leaving Iraq in '04 where they really started setting this stuff up, but then leaving Afghanistan in 14 and then leaving the Middle East in 15, just how different the going home process is in terms of going through the MP line and then
Yeah.
internal customs before you ever get like you in '04, I took a lot of stuff out of Iraq and you could still mail like there was a time where you could mail a lot of stuff before that really got very, very strict.
Yeah.
Shit, we had an investigation on one of the officers in our unit in Iraq in '03 because they mailed home pieces of a fucking M16.
Yeah.
Like you mailed home the firing pin, bro? Like really? That's what you Yeah, so that was weird. And now, like I said, by the time, 15, like you're not bringing anything. Like they're going
Right.
to find literally every possible thing that you try to bring through that to get onto the flight line. Like it's not worth it's not worth it. Let's put it that way. So I was just curious, what was the process for you like leaving? Was it
Yeah.
just like, all right, we're
So,
going home, let's just get on the plane and go, or was there actually?
so to set this up, um, track commanders at the time that weren't tankers, and I think even no tankers had M9 at the time, the Beretta.
Yeah.
So track commanders that weren't tankers um, tended to get grease guns as their sidearms, as their so that you had your M16, A2, A3, whichever it was, and then you had a grease gun. Grease gun's a 45 caliber submachine gun, not super accurate. Basically, you're just putting up a wall of bowling
Spray and
balls.
pray.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but we didn't get those because we had like two in our entire armory.
Yeah.
So we didn't get those. So several of the NCOs, and I might have been included in this number, but several of the NCOs decided that the thing to do was to go into the Frankfurt Air Force Base, the U.S. Air Force Base in Frankfurt, buy 45 caliber sidearms, and then take them apart, put them in Ziploc bags, shove them in those ammo cans of bolts and stuff that every track vehicle has, right? And just pack them. So that was done. I mean, that was done. One of the NCOs got caught. It wasn't me.
It wasn't you, clearly, because you're here.
Because here I am.
Here he is.
So the process to get him back was a little bit more difficult because they palm-kissed a lot of those tracks in Saudi. So, but it was, I mean, it was, we smuggled shit out of
Yeah.
Iraq,
I mean, I got a whole Iraqi uniform and helmet and shit that I
Yeah.
was able
So
to get.
I
But like I said, it
probably
was
had
very
7 or
early.
8 Iraqi gas masks and
That's
stuff
cool.
like
There you
that.
go. That's pretty cool. Do you wear those during
Um,
some of your trainings now? Just to...
no. I've since given them away. They were crap.
Yeah, no, they're
They
definitely
were
not good.
definitely the crap that the Russians no longer wanted, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say that was probably their best customer.
Yeah. But I mean, for us, it was just, we had our issue rifles with us
Mm-hmm.
when we flew in. We had our issue rifles with us when we flew out, and they X-rayed our stuff. But this was
Oh,
like 1991 X-ray.
yeah, that's actually pretty. Yeah, I'm surprised they did it. That's why I was curious that they even did that. So then, okay, so so what I wanted to talk about the segue was, I mean, you mentioned how the UN didn't want you guys, staying there for too long to do whatever. So,
Yeah.
do you have any theory, or is there anything, given your prior just experience, because I assume you were out by the time the Iraq War started, right, in 2003? Okay, so you were out when that case was presented by Colin Powell to the UN that there's this weapons of mass destruction and all this stuff that everyone bought. Did you have an actual theory as to why we were going back? Or
Yeah.
is there anything you thought, as just with all your
No, so
experience?
I stayed on top of all of that stuff. I did talk radio for like seven
Oh, really?
years as
Oh,
a
cool.
host and a co-host.
Oh, nice.
So I stayed on top of a lot of that stuff. Here's the thing. There's probably several reasons why we went back. And there's probably several reasons. I mean, we pushed Saddam Hussein into being non-compliant. But here's a couple of things to think about. Were there weapons of mass destruction in Iraq?
Which is a very vague term, right? It's a very vague
Yes.
term for what, because people think weapons of mass destruction, they think nuclear bombs, when it's not.
Right. It's chemical, it's sarin, it's you name it.
Yeah.
Yes, there were. We know for a fact, we have intelligence, credible intelligence from multiple agencies across the globe, that indicate that they moved a lot of stuff to Syria.
Yep.
Just like they did their Air Force. They
Mhm.
moved most of their Air Force to other countries, except for the couple that we shot down, right?
Or the ones they tried to
Um,
hide in those badly built French bunkers that didn't make
right, right, right.
it.
Um, but was it to the extent that we were saying that it was? Doubtful. And the reason is this: we knew how much um, weapons of mass destruction of various types that Iraq had because they told us. And I believe personally that the upper echelon of command lied to Saddam Hussein about the amount that they produced and stored. And I think a great deal of what we thought he had, he didn't have. And you got to realize that his compliance was based on what he destroyed. And so he would destroy a certain amount, and we'd be like, bro, that ain't all of it. And he'd be
Yeah.
like, no, that's all of it. And we're like, we know that's not all of it because you told us how much you had, and how much you had minus what you destroyed leaves a pretty big number.
Yeah.
I feel like he was lied to by his upper echelon command, um, and they didn't have as much as they were saying that they had, probably to keep Iran at bay, because they just had a pretty major war with Iran before they,
Yeah.
started mixing it up with
It's
us.
pretty much a stalemate, right?
Yeah, so I feel like they published numbers about how much they had, and we were trying to hold them to that, and there was no way they could destroy what they really didn't have,
You know,
but they weren't going to admit that they didn't
that
have.
that's an interesting because I know that there's some more stuff on that I want to ask you, but I think you brought up a really good point. I don't think people take this into consideration. Why? Because the Iran Iraq war was from what 80 to 88, 81 to 88,
Yep,
right around
yep.
those 8 year period. I mean, man, it was freaking. I don't know if you ever got
Millions
to see him
lost.
because you didn't go into Baghdad, right?
No, we didn't get that far. No.
Yeah, so there was all those monuments that were built to like martyrs, all those things that were built to that. I remember seeing like the swords crossing over the highway and
Right.
the massive amount of helmets to kind of signify how many Iraq or Iranian soldiers they killed. I was just like, man, it's fucking crazy. But I think you bring up a good point. It's just like no one really won that war, but how did like why was Saddam so? How did he? What makes you think he? I'm trying to word this, but what makes you think, or what do you think made him do what he did to cause the U.S. to get there 3 years later? Because we know he went after Kuwait and the oil and all that stuff, but like, what
Yeah.
after just going through what he did, knowing that there's no way, I mean, he couldn't defeat Iran. There's no way he's going to take on the U.S. and a coalition of people that are going to just come knocking on his door.
Right. Well, he was a megalomaniac, for
Yeah,
one.
seems to be a
Um,
common theme.
and they were slant drilling into Kuwait. So they were drilling into Kuwait's territory for oil,
From the Iraq
and
side,
from the Iraq side,
right?
and they were getting called on it, and I think Iraq was having some difficulties with it. I could be wrong here, but I think they were having some difficulties with the type of crude that they needed to be able to export, and Kuwait had more of it, and they didn't have much of it, something like that. Because there's
Yeah,
all different kinds of crude
so
oil,
many
right?
oil fields there in Kuwait
Yeah.
compared to
And then when they got called on it, Saddam was like, "Well, Kuwait's really just Iraq 2.0 anyways. I mean, you guys belong to us, historically." And so he made this case, much like is being made between Russia and Ukraine,
yeah. That's a
that
great
that
point.
there's this historical connection between the two, and really we should have all of those resources. And
Great
I
point.
mean, why are we slant drilling under the border since there's really no border? It's ours. And then
Those borders were drawn what post World War I, right? Or World War
yeah,
II?
yeah,
Was it World War I or
yeah,
two? Yeah.
yeah.
They
So they
weren't
made it.
old. Let's put it that way.
They weren't that old,
No.
and so in order to stay in power, much like they do in North Korea, um, Saddam's thing was, I'm going to make this caliphate, and we're the real Muslims here, and I'm going to show you how strong we are, and we're going to be this military caliphate. And so after you know after capturing several Kuwaiti flag tankers, the United States was like, "Yo, uh, you're screwing with our gig here, man. You know, you're messing with our infrastructure, our ability to maintain our industry and our military. Like, we can't really be having that." And I think it just kind of snowballed from that.
So did you see this happening kind of when those things you described, you thought you kind of thought we were gonna go back?
Yeah, I was pretty sure we were going to go back.
Yeah. Despite everything that just happened, 9/11, and we're in Afghanistan at
I
that
mean,
point.
you had 12 years of new, what was that, closed airspace,
Yeah.
no fly zone.
No
You had
fly
12
zone.
years of violations,
Yeah.
blatant violations of the no fly zone, more saber rattling, um, blowing up offshore oil rigs that didn't belong to them, and just a myriad of things. And then the whole weapons of mass destruction debacle
Hmm.
that ended up being their undoing. Whether any of it was true or not didn't really matter if everybody thought it was true.
Do you think so? Why do you think, knowing what you did, you laid it out where he was, destroying stuff that he didn't have, but he was moving so much to Syria. Um, if he knew war was inevitable with the United States and its partners, why do all that?
We couldn't not do it.
But why put yourself in a totally unwinnable position?
I mean, it's this to me, it's the same as the House of Saud right now. Without Saud is like the light version because they're not super militaristic, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But there's certain things that they must do in order to stay in power. You got to realize that the Ba'ath Party was they
Yeah.
were the he was not Shia. What's the other one?
No, he's a Sunni.
He was a Sunni.
Yeah.
So they were a minority,
Yep.
right? And so fear, militarism, cronyism, all of those sorts of things in a very violent manner was the way that he got in power, the way he stayed in power, and he couldn't back down from that. With they almost had a Shia uprising. When we were there in '91, we screwed the pooch on that. And
That's what I
I
mean,
think that
though.
he just couldn't not. He had to. He'd made all of these claims. He'd made all of these, and I think to some degree there might have been some um, delusion about what they. It was the fourth largest army on the planet.
Oh, dude, I remember that point being beat down to me in basic training. Like, it was almost to the point where you're like, wow, that's kind of scary. And then knowing I'm going to Iraq, I'm like, oh shit, this is the fourth largest army. I mean, we're going down the highways on our way to Baghdad, and you got thousands of people, thousands of soldiers surrendering.
Right.
He really only had a force of his Iraqi, what was it, the Republican Guard that was
Republican Guard, yeah. So I
15,
was in
20,000 that actually felt like fighting. The rest of them were just like, man, we're just here for a paycheck.
Yeah, so I was in the Third Armored Division. I think we went up against the Talakana Division, the Medina. There might have been another one, but you know, we were just smashing them. But you got to also realize that before that, they were in. They had this air campaign that was just pummeling them. I mean, we're dropping freaking daisy cutters on them, and for like a month. They were done.
Demoralized.
The only ones that fought, that were ready to fight, were the Republican Guards. Everybody else was like, screw this.
Fuck this. This is not winnable. Yeah. That's crazy though. Like, cause I don't think people account for, the size of an army is such an outdated thing, right? When it comes to capability, like, it's not, this isn't like the 1000s where you're going to go invade your neighbor and, hey, we got an army of 80,000. That really doesn't matter, bro. Like,
Yeah.
if those troops aren't armed, well maintained and trained, like they're just numbers. That's it.
Yeah, it's true. And we found that out. I mean, because their home guard or their national guard or whatever it was, those guys, I mean, they were all conscripted. Some of them had
Yeah,
zero training. You know,
that's
there was a
crazy.
story about us capturing this trench, and we get there, and there was this one guy with a Yankees ball cap on, you know, and the soldiers show up and surround him and point their guns at him. And he's like, "What the freak took you so long?" You know, and he was some guy that was home, uh, in Iraq or Saudi Arabia or Kuwait maybe, and visiting family. He was
And he
off in
got caught
college,
up into it.
and they got caught up in all of it. And he was just like, "I'm just waiting for these guys to,
Bro, I'm more American than I got my Yankees hat on and shit. Yeah, no, that's a great point. And that's, man, we're in such an odd time, but I don't think people need to or people recognize, and it's playing out. This is kind of my other segue for you because it's playing out. The United States, we do have a massive defense budget, but we don't have a massive force by any means. We're not a very large
Yeah,
military from an active side. We have a lot of reservists, but from an
yeah.
active side, we're not as big as you were when you came into the Cold War by any means.
No,
Probably half
no,
of that.
we were still quite big because we were still doing the Fulda Gap stuff.
Yeah,
Um, uh, that was pretty much towards the end of it. It was all getting ready to end. So
yeah,
uh, the Gulf War was a good segue into getting everybody back to the States.
yeah. And then we
Um,
saw what was it? Clinton got rid of what was it? Second and third armored division.
yep,
And
deactivated Second Armored Division.
yeah,
Well, deactivated the third. Second Armored Division forward deactivated because that was the one that was still in Germany. I was in the Second Armored Division when I ETS, and that
okay.
was around Clinton era. And then probably shortly thereafter, not too many years thereafter, they probably got rid of the second.
Yeah, I think that's weird because I can't remember where I heard this. It may have been Kennedy saying this thing. I don't know. But I thought that was part of like a deal to do this, reduction in defense spending and everything and all, but never really happened, right? Like we may have
Yeah.
shrank our army, but we definitely we haven't shrank the
Well, and they
budget.
had the base closures every now and then. They'd have a
Yeah,
list which
BRAC.
bases were going
Yeah,
to close. Oh, we were going to close this one, but not really.
yeah,
But I was at Fort Polk. I was in the Fifth Infantry Division when I got back from Iraq. I was in the Fifth Infantry Division at Fort Polk, and that's when they closed it down. Moved the Fifth Infantry Division um, over to Fort Hood, and
yeah. I
we
don't even
came
think
up
they're
as
around anymore.
we came up as the no, they're not. We came up as
No.
the Second Army
Yeah, I was gonna
Division. Yeah.
say we got first, we've got second, we've got third, fourth. I think they brought back the eighth for some reason. I don't know why I think that. And then there's 10th. But I
Yeah.
thought they brought back because the eighth is like that little biohazard looking patch. My grandfather
Yeah.
had that in Korea, I think. So yeah, I think they
Yeah.
brought that back. But anyway, yeah, not it's weird how the numbers are because they used to make a lot of sense and now it just kind of it's just numbers. Yeah, now they're not really sequenced anymore. But all right, so you brought up a really good point that I wanted to kind of segue into with the Iraq, Kuwait correlation between Russia and Ukraine. And you were a Russian expert and you literally were trying to convey to combatant commanders, hey, these are the Russian capabilities now. This is what you're going to be dealing with. And I feel like most people, especially, from your age down to mine, like we kind of grew up in this Cold War era. There's a lot of people now in this country who have no concept of that. And
Yeah.
all they're seeing play out is Iraq, or not Iraq, but Russia and Ukraine. And there's no real winner going on, right? And I think
No.
to them, they're just like, oh, whatever. Yeah, Ukraine, go, 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 go. But you and I are probably watching this thinking, how is Russia not defeated Ukraine by now? Because it would be like Iraq not
Yeah.
defeating Kuwait, right? If we just
So,
let that play out, which we didn't. But what do you think, more than a year into this or Russia Ukraine war? What's your whole take on that?
yeah. So a couple things. And I'll backdrop it by saying so in Intel during my period, um, you had a couple of different ways your job could go. You could have a completely tactical job and you only do the tactical stuff.
Yeah.
You could have a tactical job and sometimes you get to do the strategic stuff. You could have a strategic job and never go to the field. And then you have your other government agency stuff. And I was fortunate, I got to do all of those.
Yeah.
Um, so I got to work with other agencies under the auspices of the Department of State for a little while. I've worked in Russia. I've worked throughout all of the former Soviet satellites. I've been to Kiev. I've been to Moscow. I mean, I've been all over that place. Moldova, you name it.
Yeah.
Lithuania, Latvia, all of them. And I got to do strategic work, and I did a lot of tactical work. And when we were in Russia, I mean, these guys had 6 feet of water in some of their ICBM silos.
It's nuts.
Like maintenance is not their thing. And it continued to not be their thing. They still rely a lot on 1950s, 1960s, 1970s technology. All their conscripts right now are getting Mosin Nagant.
But they were really good back then. Why did they not continue to
They
upgrade?
were good maneuver. They were good at maneuver and they had a lot of people, but look at who they were maneuvering against. Like they were maneuvering in Kazakhstan and Afghanistan and Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia. You know, they not bastions of military might. You know,
Yeah.
and most of that maneuvering was political, anyways.
Yeah.
Right. So, looking at, you know, when this Ukraine thing started kicked off, the biggest mistake that they made from the beginning, the Russians made from the beginning, is they didn't have a single overarching commander. They had 2 or 3 different generals that weren't really tied to each other.
So no
And
Tommy Franks from the Desert Storm, right? Like yeah.
no Tommy Franks, no Schwarzkopf, you know.
Yeah.
And so
Wait, Franks was ours. Schwarzkopf was yours. Yeah, there you go. All right.
yeah,
I got him reversed.
yes.
You're right.
so so what ended up happening is they massed all of this armor and airborne might in Belarus and Western Russia and squandered it. And not that that's not a Russian thing anyways. I mean, they will squander an entire airborne division, you know, as long as they meet their ground goals, but they didn't do either. And then because of their continued lack of maintenance, they had mud. They had a thaw. And
Yeah.
they're inflating, deflating systems on their vehicles and their wheeled vehicles. They were blowing them out, so they couldn't travel, so they were dead in the water.
Yeah.
So their ability to move quickly, which speed is what gets you the big gains.
Yeah.
They had speed where they were squandering it, and they didn't have speed where they actually needed it.
So do you think this is an example of what I said previously, where numbers really don't matter? It's just how effectively you can actually carry out whatever you're doing. Because no one would think Ukraine would have been able to do this at this point. Now let's take out our external support. I'm not even talking about that,
right.
But I mean,
so
on
I
own.
think Ukraine has put up a really valiant fight considering the size of their forces and the technology that they're working with. But they've taken Russian technology and they've improved upon it. I mean, they I think they own the manufacturing for the Russian, T-80 tanks.
Oops.
Right. So a lot of the things that the decentralization of the Soviet Union, the destruction, the decay of it, so that it was Russia didn't do what it needed to do for a military infrastructure to do the types of things they tried to do in Ukraine, or anywhere else.
Do you think
Um,
Russia has held back from a resource standpoint because they're not trying to, I
no,
guess, taint the resources that they want back?
no, I think, I think their initial play was to hold back, uh, to some degree, but they kind of have to because they have a lot of other borders. China would be a big one.
Yeah.
Um, and there's cross-border crap going on all the time over there. Um, but I think the big deal is while Russia would have, if they had conscripted everybody and pushed everybody from the beginning, kind of like they did in World War II,
Yeah.
um, regardless of what they had, they probably could have taken the entirety of the Ukraine, but they couldn't have held it. They wouldn't have been able to hold it regardless. Um, they just don't have enough to hold it. They had enough to take it. They don't have enough to hold it. And by now that's foregone conclusion. They're not going to take it. They might hang on to the eastern portion of Ukraine,
Which
pretty
is
much
they're the
along this.
pro Russia fort side, right?
Yeah, pretty much along the same lines they have been since 2008. Um, but I just don't think they have the ability to do it now. And I think they're trying to find a militarily viable and geopolitically viable way to stop it. And Putin's not ready for that yet. He hasn't seen it. He hasn't seen the writing on the wall yet, or he has, and he's not ready to
Yeah, I
accept
did.
it.
So that would be my next question. What do you think about this? um, like what was it, 2-3 weeks ago? The whole Prigozhin private. What'd you make of that when that unfolded? Because I know everyone on the
Yeah.
world, especially Twitter, got very excited for like a day and it was over. It was like,
So I wanted to get out there very early and put out a tweet that said, "Look, this isn't the thing that everybody thinks it is." Um, it, that was a
why'd you say that?
scam.
Why'd you think that?
Um, it didn't have any impetus, and looking at it from a purely Russian psyche sort of standpoint, it just didn't feel like something that was going to succeed. Um, I felt more like it was, well, and you got to realize that Russian intelligence is in all of these PMCs.
Yeah.
So the Russians forces, Russian leadership, they knew what was going to go down before it happened.
And a
And I,
PMC,
I
for those who don't, it's a private military contractor. Go ahead. Okay, sorry.
which is what Wagner is, right? For the
Yeah,
most part,
exactly. Yeah, which
state
is the
sponsored.
Prigozhin thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And, I feel like this has some stink of the CIA on it. I think somebody in Western intelligence got Prigozhin to think that he would get some cool support if he needed it. Um, Prigozhin did some things that um, I still don't understand how he got away with it, unless it was his job to make the CIA think that he was going to do this and get everybody all whipped up, and then uh, you know maybe it was a poke in the eye to the Central Intelligence Agency. So I'm starting to wonder um, if the Central Intelligence Agency started something with Prigozhin and got him to think, and Russian intelligence got wind of it and said, "Hey, you know, we know that you're a good guy and you're not going to do this, but we want you to pretend like you're going to do this." Because what they do at the end of it, they shipped him off to Belarus for a week, and now he's back in Russia. And they fired Gerasimov. So,
So
I mean,
do you think Russia still has the intelligence capability that they've always been at us with, but they just lack now the military capability to enforce a lot of the things that they could?
yeah. So Russian intelligence so between the KGB and the
Yeah.
GRU, Russian intelligence pre Gulf War,
Mhm.
pre OIF, um, was was pretty cookie cutter. Um, they were very good at it, but predictable to some degree.
Yeah.
I think I think since the decay of the Soviet Union, certainly since the end of the Gulf War, maybe even since um, 2005 or 2006, I think they've learned a great deal because they've had access to other than Russian intelligence,
Yeah.
methodologies, technology. Um, I don't know. Anytime you feel like the Russians aren't good at something, they try to show you that they are, and they actually do pretty good.
Yeah.
Um, in a surprising way, usually in a way that we haven't thought about.
Yeah.
So I would never want to take away anything from Russian intelligence, but I think they're better at infiltration of their own, just like the Soviets. They're better at infiltrating their own political allies and their own military and politics than they are at others.
So with the
Not saying
fall,
they're bad at it,
yeah,
just
with the fall of the Soviet Union, who, in your opinion, since this was kind of your era, who was the biggest loss to them from a like a capability standpoint? Like who did they rely on that they no longer could at that point? I guess from the
I
regions
don't
that
think
split off.
Ukraine.
Ukraine. Well, yeah,
Um,
aside from Ukraine, because that's clearly what they're having the biggest issue
well, you
with,
got to
but
realize that,
that's what they want back.
yeah. So you got to realize that they had like, I don't know, 11 different avenues um, of approach through which they could transport military um, and supplies that were internal to them as the Soviet Union. And when the Soviet Union broke apart, those 11 different avenues became like three. And so they don't have food production. They don't have the mineral resources. Um, their ability to, they have oil. They have a
Yeah,
lot of oil. It's a very specific kind. That's why they've been
natural
buying up.
gas. Yeah, yeah.
That's why they've been buying up so much Southeast Asian oil. But their natural gas is coming from Ukraine,
Oh,
right? So they don't have much, and their population is in decline. And by 2050, if they don't prevail in Georgia, Ukraine, I'm thinking annexing or at least keeping very, very close political ties with Belarus. If they aren't able to do those things, they're not going to be relevant as a nation. They will be irrelevant
but you said by 2050.
by 2050.
That's a very, very large country to render irrelevant, though, don't you think? Do you think they just split into more
Oh,
and more
they're in
smaller
a
ones, or
steep
what?
population decline, and I'll refer you to, if you go to
Well, I mean, we're seeing the population decline outside of immigrants, right? So
right, but they don't have that.
that's true.
They don't have the
No one's
immigration.
crashing the border to go live in Siberia.
Yeah. So if you I wish I could remember the guy's name, but I think his first name, it might be um, Peter Strahan might be the name.
Okay.
He did an analysis of this on Benning's Maneuver Excellence um, YouTube channel, and he breaks it down like, what are the threats to China and what are the threats to Russia, and they're in both cases the population. The population
Yep.
is in severe decline.
Yeah. Yeah, we've seen that with China already. I know they reversed the one child policy thing. And I talked about this with Heather. It's like, everyone, and I think I recently kind of maybe a little too aggressively snapped at some dude on Twitter a few weeks ago about like pretending Russia's anything, or not Russia, but China's anything more than a paper tiger. I'm not going to say that they're not just a paper tiger, but let's pump the brakes on like this next great Chinese, military force, because at the end of the day, most of that country is a peasant population that wants no part of the United States. Like they don't, and they can't feed them, right? They can't maintain them either, and
And
it's a very,
urbanization is failing.
yeah. I mean, They're great. China does a lot of stuff, but man, there's so much of me that just wishes, this is totally from my own Eric's own personal utopia standpoint. I just wish we'd pull that fucking plug on manufacturing in that country and just,
Yeah.
like, you can't tell me we can't incentivize enough to produce this stuff here. Like,
Imagine if even if we didn't bring it back to the United States, what if we moved it to India and Bangladesh? Because we're losing relations with India right now.
yeah, and they would love to have our fucking money. And we
That's
could
right.
we could absolutely rely on them because why? Where is India located geopolitically?
That's right.
Who do they actually mass with in terms of population, right? They're already having
Yeah,
all those border skirmishes up in the mountains as it is. Like, I mean,
that's
this is
right.
a very clear picture of who you need to become an ally with.
That's right. Absolutely.
And then even, yeah, we need to build better relations with Pakistan. Like, we already saw how that played out by not having the relationship with the whole Bin Laden thing. Like,
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
these are things that
The
we just,
entirety of Afghanistan.
yeah. Oh my God. Which is a country I spent, my almost a year in, but that's another. What? Let me go there real quick. Because this is embarrassing for me. It really is. It's just embarrassing for a lot of reasons. But when you watch the withdrawal play out, man, it's almost 2 years at this point, 2021.
Yeah.
As a former service member, what just, and then just as an American overall, what was your take on that?
Well, you got to realize that I'm old enough to where our evacuation from Vietnam was on television when I was a child.
Wow. So you've seen the literal correlation.
So
Yeah.
it 100% looked like that.
That's sad,
Just
man.
larger aircraft.
It's sad.
Yeah.
And man, I really just watched this movie like a week ago and I can't remember the name of it, where it's like, is it Jake Gyllenhaal, the movie where he's like going back to rescue his interpreter from Afghanistan?
Oh yeah.
God, I just saw it.
Well,
Anyway, but so
I just saw it. I just saw it a little while ago.
did you like it?
Yeah.
It was cool. I mean, for what it was, I thought it was pretty well done. But no, they make a great point in that movie. Is like, man, there's so many tens of thousands of interpreters that worked with us and that we didn't get out. But yeah, a month later, it was all returned back to the Taliban. It's like we never were there.
Yep.
Isn't that crazy? It's like we were in 1 month.
I
It's like
mean,
after 20 years, we were never there.
how many other how many other countries have tried to do this? What we were doing
Afghanistan is
in
literally one of
Afghanistan.
like, I swear, I would love to read a history book from like 300 years from now,
Yeah.
and just the history, just Western's appearance in the country of Afghanistan. I mean, even you go back and read what some of the British, God, what are those religious groups called that go there and try and do they spread the religion? What do they call it? My God,
The ministries.
yeah, when the British ministries went there in the 1860s while we were having our civil war, the stuff that was going on there, man, it's like no one goes to Afghanistan and comes out successful. No one. It's
right.
crazy, but it's you have to respect that in a way, like it.
Absolutely. And the thing about it is, and I think we did the same thing in Iraq. When we tried to set up provisional government and all of that
Yeah,
in the beginning, I think we did the same thing. As we overestimated our ability to change an ancient people's way of thinking.
you know what? It's hard. I'll tell you this: you don't change DNA. You don't.
No,
If
they
they like,
have a
if they wanted it, they would have came up with it way before we showed up.
yeah, they have 1,000 year
Right,
old
way before us.
politics, a 1,000 year old way of doing business, 1,000 year old way of determining who respects whom. I mean, you're not changing that in a
No,
year or
that's
5 years
ingrained. That's
or
why I
a
said
couple of
that
years.
that's ingrained in DNA, and you don't break DNA. I mean, look at some
Especially
of the,
when you're the third society to come along and try to do it.
yeah. It's like, and we've seen this movie before. Yeah, like, all right,
Yeah,
we'll just wait it out. And
yeah,
I don't get me wrong, I mean, I feel like we did a lot of really good things there, but it just sucks that within a month it didn't matter.
didn't matter.
It didn't hold, and because it's not because of what we didn't hold. It's because of the faith that we put into others to carry those things out. They never bought in. They bought into
No,
the paycheck, and that was it.
yeah,
And that's kind of sad because, man, I got so many like, yeah, there's great stories of interpreters that did get out. You know, I knew one that I had that was fortunate to get out with his family. Like, I'm glad that we were able to do a lot of that. But for the most part, man, I remember being in Afghanistan, and it was like the first Wednesday, I think, of every month, we would have a women's bazaar come on base, and they would do their thing. And a lot of these women were from like the orphanages or
Right.
highly abused situations that they had gotten out of. And I just think back on them. It's like, man, I try not to let my mind drift to that place because I have no idea what happened to them. And I
Yeah.
think there's
What
only
is
one
it
bad
like
outcome.
now?
Yeah,
Right.
there's no positive outcome. It's not like, oh yeah, we'll just leave them alone, let them do their thing. No, they've probably found themselves back in those situations.
Yeah.
It's a pretty shitty concept to think of. Well, there's a damper on the mood. But the home run derby's on, so I got that going. So yeah, so that's where we're at with kind of that Iraq, Kuwait, Russia, Ukraine or correlation. And I know you brought up that you think Putin hasn't quite seen the political outcome that's best for him, but I mean, what does that look like for him at this point, especially where we get fed so many stories it's hard to make sense of whether they're true or not, if that like even Russia's ready for Putin to be gone. And
There's a lot of people suing for peace right
yeah.
now, and
I gotta grab an ice cube. Keep going. I can hear you. So
okay, yeah. So there's a lot of people suing for peace right now, and I don't know how I feel about that. Um, I I think if we I think if we don't get Putin gone, we're going to be doing this again in 5 or 10 years. But at the same time, you know, we're just shoveling money and resources to our own detriment
yeah.
into Ukraine. So I'm so like, I'm not fence sitting, but I'm like, yeah, let's crush Russia once and for all, because that was my mission for 10 years, you know?
Yeah.
And then, but at the same time, I'm like, but at what expense? Like we are actively at war with Russia without having the
Yeah.
courage or national will to declare it. Um,
100%.
and and this looks like Vietnam all over again. But we say that for every conflict, right? We say that for every conflict. But lately, every conflict has kind of had those correlations.
Yeah.
So
I was just say,
I don't.
what's the point of having another like? Didn't we learn the regime change thing doesn't work?
Regime change doesn't work. Containment really doesn't work. I mean, North Korea has been contained for 50 years, and we contained Saddam Hussein for many years. Um, I mean, at some point, do we bring back the pre-82 we can assassinate dudes? I don't know, man.
I
I
don't.
don't know.
I mean, it's funny you bring that up because man, I talk about like I think, and I don't, and I want to preface this by saying it was not something that I wanted by any means to happen. I just felt like the way they made it seem like this dude's life was in danger every single day, and nothing ever really happened from a safety standpoint. Was I thought if we were ever going to have another assassination attempt or any type of political assassination in this country, it would have been when Obama was president.
Right.
Because we haven't seen anything really since Reagan, right?
No, we haven't. And
Even around the
Reagan,
world, you don't see this stuff anymore. Where
well,
I mean,
and
we've had
Reagan, ironically,
assassinations.
was the one who ended the CIA's ability, you know, the U.S. government's ability to do assassination ops. We just do them differently now.
Yeah,
You know,
maybe.
we just do them
But
differently now.
yeah, because I mean, man, the entire 20th century was just full of political assassinations that kicked off, actual world wars and shit. And
Right. Right.
I'm glad we don't see any of that stuff. Even as volatile as Trump was to a certain group of people, like that never really seemed to manifest, which is great because you don't want to see that. But
No.
yeah, that's an interesting point. I don't know if we get back to that. I don't
So
even
yeah,
know.
I don't know how I feel about the entirety of the Ukraine Russia thing.
Because you would have thought maybe they would have tried it by now. Because I can't imagine that any of those.
Oh,
Is it that hard to
yeah,
get to Zelensky or Putin? Is it really that hard to get to
yeah,
them?
I think it's pretty difficult.
Okay.
I think it's difficult for them.
Because I mean,
I
Zelensky's
also,
doing Vanity Fair shoots and shit. Like he seems to be a fucking star anyway. Like can't be
yeah,
that.
but he's probably got Secret Service protection at the very least. You
You
know?
think ours?
I think ours.
God, because I know he's got his little handlers around him, but the guy's like he's like the size of my cat. It's embarrassing, man.
Yeah.
Like this guy's
Yeah.
anyway.
I'm
But go
probably
ahead.
the size of your cat.
Yeah, well, at least you're American. That's fine. Yeah. So yeah, we're so what do you think about you said he probably got protection and none of them can get to each other at this point because I'm surprised that nothing's really happened to either.
No, and I don't think it's a good move geopolitically either for
Really?
either of them. No, I don't think it's good. I think that will kick off like it has. I think that will kick off things that nobody really wants to see.
What do you think about Lindsey Graham calling for like we have to have an emergency session and get Ukraine admitted to NATO?
I don't think this is a good time to admit Ukraine to NATO. I think writing waivers for all of the crap that is a NATO requirement for everybody else for Ukraine is a bad idea, and it immediately puts us on a direct war footing with Russia. At this point, we still have a little bit of deniability as far as direct warfare with Russia. It's very tenuous, but you got to realize diplomatic stuff works differently than common sense, right?
Yeah.
So there's a very stark diplomatic protocol and language, and I haven't seen any of those words yet. And when I do see some of those words, I'll let you know because that means stuff is coming. But I haven't seen those yet. I think it's a bad idea.
So how much longer do you think this goes on then? Because it doesn't seem like anybody's really it doesn't seem like there's a win in the future for anybody.
Yeah, I think Russia's looking for something that they can call a win. I've heard some chatter about them maybe, if certain lines in the Crimea, Eastern Ukraine are maintained, we can call it good. But I don't know. Like I think this could go on for a very long time. And I think people are starting to lose their attention span.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, totally.
But two, starting to lose their fire for this as it drags on.
Well, I mean, if I walk around here, I still got to deal with the flag waving everywhere. There's this house over by the National Cathedral that's probably got 1,000 fucking Ukraine flags in the front yard. I mean,
yeah, everybody's got to wave a flag.
How come no one's on Russia's side? I'm not even saying like you should be. I'm just like, how did it get like this total unanimous support? Like Ukraine is the only one that has to be supported. They are the great victory. We must have Ukraine.
Well, we did a good job of being Russia's enemy for 50 years,
I know, but it's like there's no critical thought into why maybe Russia's doing what they're
doing. Or what might be bad about that,
Weird, man. It's just weird. It really is.
The entirety of the Slavic psyche, man, and they say this about Russians, but it's not just Russians. Is like a mystery wrapped in an enigma, or vice versa.
Yeah,
and it's a really hard people to unpack. It really is.
Sorry, but my fucking cat's going crazy right now, bro. What? Why now? We're almost done. He's a special creature. Yeah, no, you're right about that because, and that's why, like, there's just moments in our own leadership. Like I go back to the Lindsey Graham thing. Like, you got that video a few weeks ago, maybe it was last month, of him just sitting there at a table laughing with Zelensky, like the Russians are dying. I'm like, is that is that any time? Is there ever a time to laugh at other people dying? Like young
This
men
is
dying for something that they have no control over, and that's some sort of joke?
this is the most Hollywood movie I've ever
Yeah.
of war
Yeah.
I've ever seen. You know, it's
Yeah.
just weird. The whole freaking thing is weird. The production, um, the it's
We constantly
just
get these
strange.
drone videos from Ukraine with like a soundtrack and everything every day. It's like,
Yeah, yeah.
what is this? That's what I mean. I know you
Well, I
pointed out
mean,
like
this is
like
propaganda for TikTok. You know, we've got 6 to 20 seconds to get somebody's attention and make them believe
true.
what we say.
That's a good point. So that's why it's like it's hard for me to think like, man, how's that's why and I know you said no, but I'm just really like, how is I try to correlate this, and I've said this with other people, but it's just like, if California was just like, you know what, they broke off from the Union in the United States to try to go get them back. That's kind of what I think it would be. But I don't think like it would be very hard for us to take California back if we really wanted to. And that's why I keep coming back. Does Russia really want to get Ukraine back? Because I feel like they could.
I think their ability to do it has been heavily diminished. I don't think they had a very deep equipment inventory. And what they did have, we saw evidence that it was, not maintained very well.
Yeah, that's what I wanted
And
to
I
come
just
back
don't
to.
think they can at this point. I think they're just at this point. I think they're trying to hold what they got more than they are trying to capture more.
How did that like do you have any insight on how like they just neglected the basic tenets of upkeep and just knowing that this stuff, if they were going to be our like actual near peer adversary, like
Yeah.
because
So
we talk about how great they were at infiltrating and the human intelligence side of it, they didn't realize that, hey, we're really good at maintenance, maybe we should do what the United States does.
it's not their thing. Like they tried it in 2008. They tried it in 2014. They're reimagining their armed forces, and they changed some commanders and renamed some stuff, but um, they didn't.
Culture's too ingrained.
They yeah, it's just not their thing. They're
So weird though. That's isn't that
they're
weird to
they're
you? It's
more
like a
about taking on other aspects of different cultures than they are of
what that would it so why not take on that? Like from what?
it's not their thing. It's
That's
just
so
not. I don't.
hard
I
for
wish
me
I
to
could explain it
understand.
better, but I mean, like,
I know you're right. You're probably
you're
just like,
still
dude, I
sending
told you.
conscripts out with Mosin Nagants. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, they're fun rifles to shoot, but I'm not gonna equip a modern army with it. They just their ability to produce
Yeah.
what they needed to field a force capable of taking and holding large pieces of territory just was non-existent.
It's so weird because I remember, when I was deployed to the Middle East, I was all over in 2015. But I remember reading a story in the Stars and Stripes of like Russian military, like they couldn't afford to like issue socks to the army.
Yeah, right.
And I'm like, man, I could walk outside of my little hooch here and go to not one but two PXs within half a mile walk. I go buy whatever the fuck I want.
Right. So
Socks,
their
gym short,
their
anything.
refit in 2008 was uniforms and
Yeah.
some reactive armor. And then in 2014, they came out with the new rifle, a new variant of the
Yeah.
Kalashnikov. Um, and then they didn't produce them. They just produced, a token amount of them. So they just,
Isn't that weird though? Because like this is the same country who produced the AK-47, arguably
yeah,
probably the best rifle in human history, however you want to look at it, like from a longevity standpoint, and just it just fucking works. And
right.
then they largely won World War II. Like what happened?
Yes. So let me try to make it. Let me try to make it this comparison. If you look at what our army looked like in 90-91 when we went to the Gulf,
Yeah.
most of us, the only people that had knee pads and body armor and a high amount of night vision technology were special operations.
Yeah. Well, when we
right?
went in 2003, it was the combat arms guys because it wasn't me.
Right. And now freaking everybody's got body armor.
True. Yeah, that's true.
You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
everybody's got nods. So
very
they
good point. And
didn't do
optics, all
that.
that. Yeah, everything you can say. Yeah,
Yeah, they didn't do that.
that's crazy.
They it was like, so they have T-80s now.
Yeah,
But when I was in, they said, "Oh yeah, we've got this T-80 and we're exporting all of our other tanks, but we're not exporting the T-80. We're keeping them in Russia, right?" It didn't exist. The T-80 didn't exist. It was completely on paper. But the entire Western world believed it, and they're still doing that.
so they're too busy trying to pull a psyop off of rather than just doing a real op.
Absolutely, because
No one
what would they
thinks.
have to do? They would have to spend enormous amounts of money that they probably don't have. Their economy is still very oil based.
Yeah,
You know, they've diversified a good deal since the 90s, but it's still very oil based. And they just don't have the capability to do big country stuff. And they're not used to that because we treated them like a big country.
it's really insightful what you're saying because yeah, I think a lot of people still, at least from our age bracket, look at Russia from this Cold War perspective, right? Where they was like,
Was
that was
monolithic,
that was the
yeah,
evil empire, whatever
U.S.
the fuck.
fear. And you know, in some ways they are,
Yeah.
but it's mostly strategic. It's not tactical.
Do you think China's the same way, or do you think China's
I think China, I think China's the same way.
yeah,
Look at the aircraft carriers; they're still
yeah,
using, you know, scoop type freaking
yeah. No,
technology.
I agree 100%. I know everyone tries to pump this China fear porn to us and all.
Well,
And
didn't China buy Russia's big ass aircraft carrier that never got built? I think I
it's so
think China
wild to
bought
me.
it.
Like China is literally like, and this is what I don't understand because Japan does it to an extent too. Like you see this with Japanese whiskey. I have to bring it back to the spirit world.
Of course.
Early 1900s. The guy's name escapes me at this point, but he was a Japanese man who was sent over to Scotland. He even took a Scottish bride to learn how to make whiskey like the Scots, and brought all that information and all that technology back, and they started their first distillery and all. And Japan is very good at replicating something.
Yeah.
Same thing with beef. Like they did it. The whole reason they
Yeah.
came up with Japanese Wagyu beef was to appeal to the American servicemen, like because they didn't
Absolutely.
have cows, like they didn't do beef. Like, and it's weird when I thought of, I'm trying to think of like what is it was not beef so much, but in China there's no pork, or no, it's not pork. There's no beef in China. Like
Yeah,
it's
very
all
little.
pork. Yeah, it's all.
Very
And
roughly.
it was one of the most like staring me in the face obvious things until someone actually said it to me like a month ago, and I was like, holy shit, you're right. They
Well, they
don't.
got beef now because we ship them either the
Yes.
cows or the quartered beef
Yeah.
so that they could fix it up and ship it back to us.
Right. It's so like
What the
it's
hell?
just such a weird phenomenon to me. It's like, but I'm looking at it from a Japanese perspective. It's like, yes,
Yeah.
we have no idea how to do that, but we can go learn it, and we'll do it very, 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 very probably better than you when it comes to like Scotch and whiskey and,
Well,
and
it's
what
that
they do.
it correlates perfectly into the military world too, because
Yeah.
you've seen what the Japanese have done with our F-16s.
Mhm.
I mean, they've they take an F-16 and they make it so freaking, you know, 10 times better as far as its capability in electronic warfare
Well, they're the
and
masters of continuous improvement. Look at Toyota. Like they
yeah,
invented
yeah,
basically the concept. They know how to
yeah,
make something better over and over and over. But for whatever reason, they're just not, they don't come up with it. They just
right. Yeah.
But I say that with China as well. It's like, man, you saw, remember the big deal? It was, man, I think it may have been during the Obama administration. I feel like had to have been, at least maybe the tail end, when they shot down one of our, or no, they didn't shoot it down, but we had like a B-2 bomber or some shit crash in their area, and they recovered it and they
Yeah.
never gave it back.
Right.
And I'm just like, oh, okay, well now they're gonna make one. But are, are they? Are we really the only ones? Because we sit here and we bang on ourselves so much
Yeah.
We bang on the military, we bang on all the woke, we bang on everything that we possibly do. But are we really the only ones that even have any sort of R&D that come up with this shit at this point?
I think we're freaking good at it. And I don't know if it's all Americans that make us good at it. Maybe
That's people
it's
from all. Yeah, I
guys
mean,
from
trust me, we
India
got
and
most of our
Germany
people.
and
These
you know
projects
what I'm
are not.
saying? Like, because what is American anymore, right?
Yeah,
Um, but we're freaking good at it. I mean, ingenuity is what we're known for.
yeah, yep. Not so much at the government side at this point, because that's where our
No,
real
but
challenge
but
is.
even then,
It's our private base, our private sector base.
who else does government the way we do it? Like we're still pretty unique.
Yeah, no, you're right, and that's why I say, like, I get in these conversations all the time. It's like, I know what you're fed from a mass media perspective. It's just like it really isn't that.
No,
It's not. You have these outliers that make it seem like it's everyone, but man, at the end of the day, I said this the other day. Like, we from a military side, if we really want to reach out and touch you, we could. And we've had some blunders, and they've been well publicized, and the hits and the arrows have been well earned. But for the most
right.
part, you know, I think we're all right.
I think so too. And I think most of our blunders have been when we have, instead of just going in and straight up conquering a place,
It'd be better.
we try to make a
Nation
mini one
build.
of us. Leave it. Yeah.
Yeah, nation building, regime change, all that stuff. Mr. Paul Bremer, I know I've mentioned you a million times on this podcast, but if I do ever see you, I'm really unhappy with you as a
One of
human.
these
Yeah, I'm just you're nah.
to the moon.
I would just like to meet that guy and be like, what's it like knowing that you're responsible for like hundreds of thousands of deaths? What's that like?
Right.
And
Millions.
he's probably out here somewhere. I mean, it can't be too far from me at this point. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with that guy. All right, let's shift real quick, and then I know I don't want to keep you all night. I got a movie to go watch soon, but Sound of Freedom. Have you seen that yet?
I'm gonna watch it.
Yeah, I'm excited. I hope I stay awake because it's a little late for me, but
Yeah.
why not? I get to sleep in
Old
it.
timer.
I know. So War Lizard Tactical. Tell me what War Lizard Tactical is.
So War Lizard Tactical is we got a small firearms academy here, and our mission is to train as many people as we possibly can without cost being a barrier to training. So our courses are super
Awesome.
inexpensive.
Yeah, that's
We
cool.
try to pack in a ton of value. We teach it like a martial art. So you take that entry level fundamentals course. You have to graduate that course before you can start taking other courses.
Now, is it like an
We've
army
got
course where you just get pushed through no matter what, or do you have to earn it?
no, you have to earn it. So
Good.
and it's a little bit subjective. That fundamentals level, what we're looking for is, comfort with manipulation, safety, because
Yeah.
that defensive level, like on our defensive pistol track, that defensive pistol one course, so the next course after the fundamentals, the very first thing we do is run with guns. So
Like
um,
physically running with them.
physically
That's awesome.
running with
Yeah.
guns.
Okay. Cool.
So so some people, they show up and they've already got some skills, and they take it once on the fundamental level, and they're able to. We have like a little casino chip. I don't know if I have one handy.
Oh, there you go. Nice.
We have like a little casino chip for each level.
Cool. That's
So
cool. That's a nice little
so you
touch.
get your chip for that level. That means you can start taking the next level classes. We train people from PMCs. We train military. We train law enforcement. We got guys from HSI to take our courses. No ATF are allowed. And then
Why aren't the ATF allowed, Joel?
that's a whole different episode.
That'll be the second episode. I still got to get
Yeah.
Mr. Claude's barbecue back on for part 2, because man, he ended with a great cliffhanger. Like, bro, now you want to tell this story after 2 hours? What the
Yeah. So and then just a ton of civilians who otherwise wouldn't train because
Yeah.
I buy a gun, I can barely afford the gun, and now I got to pay $150 to go to a pistol run class.
Yeah, that's true.
So we do that fundamentals class for $45. CCW stuff is a complementary component of that, so we'll help you get ready for your CCW.
What's that look like in Arizona? CCW.
It's basically a safety course. I mean, you could take a 30-minute safety course and it would meet the requirements, but we give people actual training.
Oh,
We make sure that they understand use of force and the concealed carry laws in the state
do you,
and
do,
have, yeah,
do you know what Virginia's was where I'm at?
what is it?
So I came from California, right? Now I know it's
Yeah.
changed recently. Apparently, my brother was trying to tell me like it's all dependent upon the local sheriff now. But for the
Yeah,
most
it
part, when
is.
I was out there, it's like you literally had to go to court and prove your life was in danger.
Yeah, I remember that.
However, Virginia just got to be a resident.
Yep.
That's
So
it.
we have resident and non-resident.
It's so good. 5 years. I literally walked to the courthouse, paid my $50, got my thing, and then now here's where they get you. You got to buy a handgun. You have to have a Virginia driver's license that's at least 30 days old.
Gotcha.
So cool, fine, got it. Because I walked in, I'm like, man, I got all this stuff. And they're like, yeah, you have a California license. I'm like, fuck, all right, I'll be back in 30 days.
Get that squared away. Yeah. So we're a constitutional carry state, um, but there are some benefits. Like you can go into a place that serves alcohol for consumption if you
Okay.
have the card and you're
Ah,
concealed and you
yeah, I
don't
haven't.
consume.
That's a good point. I haven't looked into that. I just know like I purposely lived on the free side of the river because man, you could cross over to DC and then it's just yeah,
Very different.
now I'm a criminal. I'm the bad guy.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping that the firearms policy coalition will take care of that soon too.
Yeah, well, it's dependent on who's in office, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we just won a big case. We, all of us,
America.
America, we just won a big case about the frames and 80% lowers. So not a firearm. And the brace ruling, we'll see that pretty soon. And I've been following that case pretty closely. It looks like we got a good shot of winning that too.
That's cool. You have this knowledge base. So how did you get into the tactical training side? Because I think a lot of people just, and I'm glad you're someone from this background because, you know, everyone in the army who joins gets, basic marksmanship, right? And
Yeah.
then everyone at any unit level has the option to go do advanced training if they so pursue it. But most people don't. But so how did you find yourself into that to
So
get
there's a
into?
story.
I
So I
like
kind of
stories.
wanted to do it anyways, and I like running guns. I've been doing it a long time, but I never really wanted to teach. And at some point, I was like, maybe I'll get my NRA certs
Yeah.
and just I won't teach people that if somebody wants a basic course, I'll just teach it to them, Boy Scouts or whatever. Um, and then uh, my son was in the ROTC program at the University of Arizona,
Okay.
and he'd
Wildcat.
already been to basic camp. Yep, they're down. Already been to basic camp as a sophomore. Was doing really well. Was starting to get into some leadership positions, and he was selected for sapper school.
Okay.
Um, was
Which, for those of
getting
you who don't know, it's like some pretty cool advanced engineer shit. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's like the
Cool school. Yeah.
fourth tabbed force, right?
Yeah, it's cool. It's a very cool school.
Got selected for sapper school, number one on the order of merit list for the
Oh,
program,
nice. Damn.
and was put into a leadership position and diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in the same week.
Oh, come on. Here we go. No, I already see where this is going. All right, keep going.
So, of course, no scholarships anymore. Pretty much ruined the entire plan that he's had since the fifth grade, right?
Fucking dumb.
Um, and him and his fiance were hit pretty hard with that.
Yeah.
And um,
Man, I'm really biting my tongue
it's
on
gonna
some of
get
this shit.
emotional.
Yeah. No, I'm biting my tongue on a lot of it because I know exactly where you're going.
Tough situation, really tough
Mhm.
situation. But my
Yeah.
kids, the way we raise our kids is to just roll with stuff and tough it out, and in true fashion, he did that. But he was having a hard time focusing that semester on grades, and it was just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And so he's really passionate about the gun stuff. And I was like, let's do this company. Let's build something that he's passionate about, that I can kind of direct his attention to, and have him focus on something that's positive rather than on the negative.
Yeah.
So that's what we did.
That's awesome. So your son does this with you?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, cool. That's cool as shit.
Kind of a family stuff, and then his wife,
Yeah.
is part of it as well.
Oh, good. Well, so there's a happy ending to this story
There's
because,
a happy ending to it, but
yeah,
it's a very emotional situation.
no, absolutely. And that's why I said I'm going to bite my tongue on a lot of stuff that I can say in terms of the counter narrative to what usually goes to people like your son who in juxtaposition of who get to serve still. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean,
no,
he
that's
got a lot of really good support from the local guard, recruiters,
Mhm.
and
Yeah, as he should.
his leadership at the school, and his leadership in Big Army. And they actually didn't separate him for a year.
No, it's good. But I mean, it's,
Forgot.
you know, I always go back to someone like your son that we're talking about. Like, you know what, if this was like a legit national emergency or whatever, are we going to make a fucking deal out of this?
Yeah.
No, we're gonna send him to go do exactly what he was tracking to do, and he's probably gonna
Yeah.
go do it admirably and perform great. And there's not going to be a fucking issue. But because we have some stupid arbitrary regulation, and don't get me wrong, I agree with there's plenty of regulations from a medical standpoint. I've read every single fucking one of them. I had to, but there's times when I'm just like, come on, really?
Yeah. So this is the guy you want in your unit, honestly.
Exactly. It sounds like it. I mean, if he's anything from you,
I was on the phone with one of the recruiters who was trying to get him transitioned over to the National Guard to see if they could take care of him there.
yeah.
I'm talking to his Big Army advisor at the university, and the staff sergeant was like, "Sir, I just want to tell you that we got a guy that in your program that's just got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. They've got his dad here." And he's like, "Who is it?" He's like, "It's Gaines." And he's like, "Damn it." And that was almost as heartbreaking as getting a diagnosis.
Yeah. The dude knew who you were.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's fucking shitty, man. Because it's why I said, like, I have. It's kind of it's a blessing to, I have plenty of negative sides and stories from being in the recruiting world at the end of my active time. But there's a lot of positives to it. But there's a lot of stories mixed in with that are very similar to your son, and it's just like some of the stuff that we disqualify. Not just like people who, oh yeah, I got a 32 on the ASVAB. I barely qualified. Oh man, but you found this to disqualify me. No, I'm talking about like dudes and some women too who are like literally the quintessential best and the brightest, and we're gonna hold this fucking bullshit medical reason as to
We can't
why
find some way to work with them.
yeah, that's a barrier to their service when they could literally fucking change the unit they go into for the better. And it's just like, man, I hate to say this, but your son is just one of many stories in my 7 years that I saw. And I'm just like, man, this is fucking stupid. It really is. It's really stupid. And from a counter side of it, to the people that there's a very specific section and sect of people that we bend over backwards to push through. And even then, yeah, no, it's just like, man, you come on. Like, this is who we're going to trade this person for this person. And it's just like, man, if this was like, and I go back to, if this was like a legit national emergency where it's time, hey, this is no shit. All hands get the fuck on deck because we got to go do some shit. It wouldn't be a problem. He'd be there so whatever he's supposed to do.
There was a first sergeant who actually had type 1 diabetes that was able to deploy and do all that stuff, but they just weren't allowing it at that time.
I know.
But the thing about it is cool thing is, we're both passionate about this. We're both passionate about training people. We have that Whoville tactical shirt. I don't know if you've seen that, small unit ops. And we take the proceeds from that. That's something Demp and I kind of put together. We take the proceeds from that. We train people for free. We buy them kit using that money. Man. So, we just want to get as many people trained as possible. We train about 300 people a year.
Oh wow, that's awesome, man. Yeah,
Yeah,
dude,
we're
that's
on pretty
fucking
good
cool.
scale.
That's
Yeah,
literally that's
and
like 2 basic training classes a year right there. That's awesome.
yeah, so we're doing good, and we've got a
Yeah,
good retention
that's 2
rate. So people
cycles. That's cool.
people take our courses. Usually uh, when they take that first course, we know we're going to have them for other courses as
Yeah.
long as we can get them past that.
Are you only in Arizona?
We're only in Arizona now. I think we're going to do a couple courses in Texas in
Okay.
24. We've been asked to come out to
Yeah, you
Cleveland,
need to go
Ohio in
save Texas.
September.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Texas needs saving.
Yeah, so we have a training partner that we might be able to do some stuff with along with the I-20 corridor.
Yeah.
I don't want to divulge anything yet,
No,
so
that's cool. That's
still in
cool.
early stages of discussion with that. But yeah, we're looking to do some other things, and we're constantly questioning ourselves on, like, how big of a business do we want this to be? How long do we want to do this?
Walmart. That's what you want. You want Walmart.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome, man. I'm glad there's a positive ending to that story with your son because, yeah, like I said.
Yeah, and he's doing great. He finished school. He's working in the defense industry as an engineer.
Oh,
And
imagine that. Like he could do the other side, but he can't. You're just trying to tell him
yeah,
he can't.
yeah.
All right, good for him. Good. I love that he still gets to do it. That's cool. Good for him. All right. All right. Joel, is there anything else you need to pimp while you're here? I'm about to get out of here.
Let's pimp Chaos Terrain real quick. Just
Yeah,
2
let's do
minutes.
that. What is that?
I wrote a book.
Yeah.
It's okay. It doesn't suck totally.
What's it about?
So it's about the first United States ship in space, and they're going to the Jovian moon Europa,
Okay.
and they're going to explore Europa, and some funky stuff happens.
Okay. So wait, they're going to Europa. Europa's Saturn, isn't it?
Europa is a Jupiter's
Jupiter.
moon.
Okay. Did you
Jupiter
say
moon,
that?
yeah.
Okay. So
I
Jupiter. All
said
right. I know you.
Jovian. I said Jovian.
Yeah. No, Europa's a very big popular thing in lore and all. I know there's I don't know if it's a Steve Vai song, Europa, but there's a really big guitarist in America that wrote a song called, maybe it was Eric Johnson, but Europa is one of his famous songs. So I do know that. I only know that moon from that song. I have to go figure out. Yeah, I got to
It's an
figure out.
intriguing moon. There's possibility that there's life there, and we want to get there and find out. And so,
Hey, Elon Musk will do it. All right. So that book is called Chaos Terrain. I'm gonna go.
Okay.
I'm gonna get on. I'm gonna go order that as soon as we're done here, and I'm gonna send it to my daughter because she's into all that cool shit. So I'm gonna order that. All right. So Chaos Terrain. Where can you get Chaos Terrain?
you can get it at Barnes and Noble. You can get it at Amazon, Goodreads.
This is a real book.
It's a real book. We're gonna also you can go to chaostrainbook.com or joelgaines.com, and it's there. Links are there. We got some swag and stuff there as well.
Hell yeah.
But hopefully I'll be getting it into the Apple library here pretty soon. I got some other distribution deals going on.
Okay, cool. When did you write that?
I just released it in February, middle of February.
You're just now telling me? Like I could have been pimping this all this time. Oh my goodness. All right. Chaos Terrain. I'm going to go order this now. You should do the same. And Joel, where can these fine folks who've made it this far go and listen to you and follow you on anything that you have, whether it's Twitter, whatever other accounts you got?
Yeah. So War Lizard Tactical on
War Lizard Tactical,
Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, for those of you that still do that. And then Joel Gaines on Twitter.
All right. That's Joel Gaines. I appreciate you hanging out with me for a little bit. I'm going to go.
Great time, dude.
Yeah, Sound of Freedom. Yeah, we didn't even get into any push-ups or anything yet. We'll have to do a follow-up because I make mental notes throughout my entire time of doing these, and when you have a high tolerance, you don't really forget much these days, which I don't. Which is great. So I would love to have you back if you're down for it.
Absolutely. We'll talk about push-ups and hydration.
Yeah, we'll do push-ups. We'll do a little fitness deal next time. But anyway, that's Joel Gaines. Get on Chaos Terrain. Go buy that book. Get on War Lizard Tactical. Go learn how to do better as you are as a shooter, because you can always get. So that's the cool thing. Real quick, you can never be too good as a shooter. You just can't. Like there's no I've reached the pinnacle. Like there's not.
This is the weapon, brother. This is
right.
Weapon.
It's funny you say that. Do you remember this real quick? Okay, I need to end this. But man, it was Bullet. Did you ever see that movie Bullet with Tupac? And yeah. You're the only
Yeah.
perfect weapon. That crazy
You're
like
the only
Vietnam
perfect
vet. He's like,
weapon.
you're the only smart weapon or some shit. Anyway, that's just
Yeah.
reminding me of that. But anyway, all right, that's Joe Gaines. All right, and we're gone.
All right, we're gone.
We are gone. Let me figure out. There we go.